Hello all, and welcome to another edition of the Low Code Campfire. This is the number 85 for February 24th, 2023. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantin'. We also have represented today from Plantin', Patrick Anderson, our Technical Success Manager. This is an event we do every Friday this hour to get together, talk about our experiences with the Plantin' product, and maybe share techniques, challenges. We invite you to bring something to show and be ready to help. This is in all skill levels welcome, so please feel free to jump in. We get into the deep end sometimes, but we're very happy to be in the shallow end as well. All of these episodes are recorded, so you can go out to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/plantin'. You can use that QR code there if you like. But those links are also in the emails that we'll send to you. Yeah, subscribe for those episodes. You'll and set the alarm bell. You'll know when we post up new ones. We run a pretty simple agenda in this meeting. We say hello. We go around the campfire with things like first call, something that is important and you want to talk about. But then we look at contributions to our community campfire website, look at feature requests, any topics that are submitted in advance. And then sometimes we talk about ghost stories and dark corners. Those are either places where you had a scary experience with the product, or maybe you got off into an area that doesn't get much use, or we haven't talked about much, so it's a little bit of an exploration. After we go on for about an hour, we'll turn off the recording, raise a virtual adult beverage, and go into our Afterglow segment where we just enjoy each other's company for a few more minutes. So please do engage with us. Jump in. We'd love for you to show and tell if you've got something to show. But meeting format, we do just ask that if you have some noise going on behind you that you mute, and this is a very respectful group. You'll get a chance to speak, but also be courteous to others. You can submit questions and topics in advance using that QR code, or again, links that come in the emails that we send to you. With that, I will say hello, good morning to all.
Hello, hello.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Many friendly faces, and nobody new happens to be here today. Don, you look like you're enjoying the outdoors.
I am.
Yeah.
My last couple of days in Key Largo before heading a little bit north. We're breaking our snowbirding into a few segments, and the Key Largo segment is almost over. Then we'll be at the northern part of Florida, and then at the end of March on the way home.
Nice.
Not quite as exotic as Jerry up on the top of a mountain someplace broadcasting, but very respectful.
Right. Very cool. Top of a mountain, that'd be neat to do.
In the middle of a run. I am amused and amazed by Mr. Maddox.
I'm trying, guys. Can you see me yet?
Yeah.
There he is.
You are.
Hey, let's see if I can figure this thing out.
So, you out at the track?
I am not at the track. I am in the lovely resort city of Detroit, Michigan. I am currently just south of Detroit on a wonderful lake called Lake Erie, for those of you that don't know. Do I have a camera operating by chance?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
See you.
Am I pointed at a house or am I pointed at a lake?
At a lake.
Okay, I couldn't tell because I can't see myself at the moment on my phone. But no, my wife is on a movie set, and I'm just entertaining myself while she does her thing. So,
oh, cool.
That's my exotic locale for this particular campfire, guys.
Front of or behind the camera?
No, she is an actor, and so she's in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And I just hang out of the way of all cameras, except my phone, of course.
Well, excellent. Okay, so let's move into the business portion of our meeting. We'll do more on the personal in a little while, but first call. Who's got something that they want to talk about? Something they want to ask about?
Everyone's polite, so I'll jump in.
Please do, Tom.
Jerry, a big shout out to Jerry because he helped me. He had done an example of Google Maps. Great couple of files up there in that Campfire repository, the examples area, which was great. And what I learned from that is that you can use the action forms portion of the product to kind of do all kinds of cool things, which instead of just putting a form up, which I've always thought that's what you do. So I kind of jumped in from that, thinking that would be a cool thing to do, to put up some static stuff on load, go do some things, and then basically toss a bunch of HTML and JavaScript on a page, and then let the page do its thing. And it doesn't seem to work. I thought that the JavaScript could go in the static text. So I, at the pre-init, do a number of things to build some HTML and some JavaScript. And then in the static, I drop tokens in to basically create what I thought would just be a chunk of code that would get dropped on the page when the action form process was done. But it didn't put the JavaScript, it only put the HTML there. And am I doing it wrong? Well, I must be doing it wrong, or does it not do it that way?
So, yeah, I've had the benefit of hearing a little bit of the story already. So I know that I've suggested some things, some tools that are available to use for it. But I think the short answer is yes. I mean, Jerry's example of the maps is just that. There's a bunch of JavaScript as part of a static text, and it's possible to drop in some tokens into that. But I think, and Jerry might back me up, it can be a little bit cantankerous. I mean, you can get JavaScript errors. You do need to be careful with the formatting of things. So you might be running into something along those lines. And if you have it to show, we might be able to spot what's going sideways in your implementation.
And you can also do some easy testing by either putting alerts on the page or putting things into the console. Putting values into the console to do some easy tests to see if you're actually getting anything running at all.
I've tried doing alerts. I'm not familiar with how to put something in the console to see it appear there. But I have done the alerts, and the alerts didn't pop up when I thought they would. That's been my technique for JavaScript debugging. So it'd be interesting to know how to do the console, or at least I can go look it up to figure out how to drop something into console. That sounds interesting.
Guys, I think my first question would be, sir, is it after you've done all your work, is it the map itself that's not displaying? It's just as if you're not communicating to the Google Maps and nothing's happening?
In the case of the map, and when we worked on it, we got it working, and it was great. That worked great. That project is finished. The client's very happy. But because of doing that, I got bold and tried doing a completely other situation. And this other situation is to we had a little audio player, so we're tossing up an MP3, and then I wanted to throw some JavaScript that would tell me where I'm at, and so show what place in the audio it is, and then have some links that would move the pointer so that it's playing somewhere else. That kind of a thing. So that's the JavaScript that I'm talking about. So I had it the recording company, the client has this tool that they use, and the tool does a recording of a meeting, and it gives two different files. It gives an audio file, an MP3 file, and then it gives a text file, which is a tab delimited file of the time, stamp, and what was being talked about. So somebody taking notes during the recording is building these segments, and then there's this file of segments. And what I want to do is show the segments on the screen while it's playing, show by highlighting what segment I'm in, and then for each segment, I can click on a segment and it would jump the track to play that segment of the audio. So that's the mechanism that I have. And so I, during pre-init, I go and open up that file, turn it into a list, and then for every row of the list, I build a table of segments, and that all works great. It's just getting the JavaScript to get stuck on the page. So I do a view page source after it runs, and the JavaScript's not there.
Is the JavaScript that you have, are you calling a function? Is that what it is? Or is it a function in the JavaScript that you call from other places?
Yes, there is a function that I create for positioning. And then there's a function I create that on a timed basis goes and sees where the audio is playing and highlights the appropriate segment.
So probably the best way to really troubleshoot this is to actually look at the implementation, but there's a couple things I can say is that I've had good luck with putting functions into the form initialization script area under settings, in the form settings, putting functions into the initialization scripts for a form, and then calling the function from other places in the form using the function call. You do have to make sure that when you put it there that you and this is something that changed a while back. It's got to be window dot function name, and then you define the function. And then when you call it, you call the function by just using the function name.
Oh, wow, that's great. I had no idea to drop it into the settings. I was dropping it into a static text field. One of the things, this building a list, when I go and open up the tab delimited file, go and get the segments, the columns in the file, the way that I was going to determine where I'm playing is to do a loop of the segments. And so I created an array in JavaScript for each of the segments. And then my timed function just runs through that loop. And if the current time in the audio is within a segment, that's the segment that I would light up. The other ones I would change, back to not being played, and the lit up one would be lit up. So that function I grabbed during the execute each item in a list. I built the array, the JavaScript. Array name sub loop variable equals the current second in mark, that kind of thing, and had that. So I need to build a portion of the script in the pre-init, so I can't put it in the settings, but all the other functions I guess I could put there.
So I'm not a JavaScript guy, but first of all, I wanted to illustrate the initialization scripts that Patrick was talking about, where this is within the form builder and the settings, advanced settings of the product. And then
I also just want to quickly recognize that that I hadn't seen Mark's message in the chat when I was saying what I was just saying. So I wanted to point out that he also mentioned the fact that you have to define your function as window dot function name.
Okay, great.
So am I doing this right? Does this look good? If I wanted to illustrate console log, for example.
Yeah, looks right to me.
And then
cool. That's great.
How would I call this? Here, or I could call it here, right?
But call it on the the on change click of a field.
All right,
That's a good example.
This is, let's make a, I'm going to save that much work, and then we'll create a field. So for example, we'll do a first name field, doesn't matter. And in the on change click, we would do what?
Yep, and then open parenthesis, close parenthesis, because you don't have any parameters. If you had parameters in your function, you put them in there.
Right. So just if I type anything within this field, it should call my function. And for illustration, I'm going to go into effect console. And so anything that gets written to the console will appear here. And so just typing a letter and it's working.
Yeah, exactly.
So we could pass the value off to it.
Wow.
So earlier on the clipboard, I pasted this, the console log syntax from W3 schools.
Yeah.
And just pointed out the same thing, that when you, they provide a nice run element, so you can see console log working and showing up in the console, but you have to go to console log. So I think that's much better than alerts.
Oh yes, very much
great, so. But you can kind of put a lot of stuff into the log and then eliminate it when you're done.
Especially if you have a lot of values that you're dealing with that are being updated or something like that, because the alert blocks you. It stops progress. But the log, you can put a bunch of stuff into the log.
The settings thing, that is a tremendous help. Not realizing to throw all of the functions into settings to get it started, and not trying to throw it into a static field. That makes a lot of sense, and that's where you're expecting it. The product is expecting it, so that certainly makes sense. The only thing that I assume that I can have another script segment in HTML that I can put into the static field, and that's where I put that array that I'm building during the execute. Assuming that it needs to go somewhere, and basically I'm viewing that as building a string. That string is, if I do it correctly, correct JavaScript array name sub loop counter equals the value, and then I've got this big long array declaration, and then that I toss into the top of the static. But in the settings, I put all of the other functions there. So I've got, in effect, two different script areas, and that should work. This is great, because I do have some time aside for personal time. I don't want to take any more of the group's time. What you just told me is immensely helpful. What I'm going to do is play with this, and then hopefully by Tuesday I've got some time on the open community time to test it out, and hopefully at that point I can jump in and say no problem, everything's great. But if not, where I ran into it, I'm also going to take all of that and just put it into a static file to show that the JavaScript is all working. If it was pure just an HTML page that I built, standard HTML page, that it all works, in case what I've learned here today still doesn't work.
So just to also mention for anybody who isn't familiar with JavaScript and the console, that those kinds of errors will also show up here in the console. So that's another great reason when you're logging things out to the console, and you can look for errors, and those kinds of things will often, if there's a JavaScript error on the page, it may prevent other JavaScript. In other words, action form will start looking like it doesn't work right because a JavaScript error on the page has blown it up. So another great place to be looking to see if when you're working with JavaScript, to make sure that you're checking here.
I would like to add on to this conversation at the moment. I think it's my belief, and I'm checking this against you all, but I think you can go ahead and put your JavaScript in a static text box if you prefer, instead of the initialization section, as long as you use that new notation of adding window dot in front of your functions.
Yeah, I think that should work. Yes, I do find that for timing, sometimes putting it in the initialization script works better. That if you put it into a static text field, there's a delay for the function being available.
Sure, and then you want to put what is it, on page ready, on ready page, something like that, to so that it would be timed to be the page loading would be complete before it tries to create the function.
What I had seen was not a function. I didn't put the function in. I hadn't gotten that far. What I saw was the loop that I do was basically building an array. So prior to the loop, I started a token that started constant value equals new array. Then in the loop, I have array name sub loop counter equals the current value of the row that I'm trying to build. At the end, I should have built a token called my script. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot. I put script, and then at the end, after the execution of the doing the loop, I put an end script. So that token should be a full little piece of JavaScript, which just created an array. That's all it did. I added that in the static text field, and then underneath that was the other token, which I used to build a table of segments. Those are the two tokens that were in the static field. When I ran it and then went and viewed source, I saw the table, but did not see the script above it.
You might it might not work the way that you're intending. So you might try taking the begin script and end script and not incorporating it as part of your token. There might be something going on there that isn't being interpreted correctly. But again, the scripting that Jerry provided in the mapping would probably be a good guide for how to pass tokens in into a JavaScript.
Got it. I'm going to go back and look at the things that we did there and try to see the similarities. Great, thanks.
Good first call. What else? I'm going to do a callback to one from last week. Thanks. I'm glad that the discussion went on without me. It was my wife's birthday last week, and we did fun things, and so I got to listen to it earlier in the week. And so there was a lot of discussion about form responsiveness, and so I just wanted to kind of do a quick callback to that. I've made a simple form. The question was, this was led by Ben. I'm glad you're here on the call, about how fast forms load, and so I've made a simple form that has nothing but a static text and a button, and none of it does anything but just to load. And so I want to point out, and I've already started a discussion separately with Ben, but in the same way, this inspect, looking at the network tab, is going to, when you refresh it, it's going to show you all the things that go on when this form loads. And this might be a good way, if you're trying to debug things, to figure out if there's anything that you could influence or provide information to us if it's still running slow after you've worked through this. So, for example, you can sort all of the things that get loaded when the page loads by time, and come down to the bottom and see, for example, that this simple form loaded in just over a second, but also what things were going on. And so in my case, I'm logged in as an administrator, and I have the persona bar down here on the left. And there's a lot of things going on that have to do with persona bar coming in. So you can see what it is that's taking so much time, and then maybe that will give clues about what to fix in your environment. I'm going to take this same URL and load into an unauthenticated user, so I no longer have persona bar, and we'll do the same thing and go to the network tab and refresh the page. And so now, sorting by time, we see that the page loads in half a second because there's no persona bar stuff, and there's a few things that took, you know, 1/10 of a second here on each of three things. So you could take a look at, well, what is going on in there, and see if you can influence what's going on. Ben, have you had a chance to do this kind of work on that page you were showing last week?
Unfortunately, no. I'm so swamped with so many different things, and in order to do a true test of this, I would have to create a completely separate page to hold this one form, because otherwise all of the other things that are loaded on the page are going to skew the numbers.
Sure. I know that we've run into some interesting issues with your firewalls in the past, and it's making me wonder if something is being denied or held up. So I think there's something worth testing in your environment, because, you know, seeing, I mean, I think you could argue that, well, let's just say along the lines of the discussion from last week that, you know, we get a great benefit from low code. Is half a second good for loading a simple form? Is the 3 seconds that it takes to assemble all the stuff on a page good? Well, if you're in that back office scenario that Patrick was showing, where you bring everything together so somebody can do some work without having to navigate elsewhere, you know, maybe it is worth waiting for all that stuff to load. But there are definitely things that can be going on in an environment, whether it's something like a firewall or a resource-starved computer or something like that.
Just out of curiosity, are you using Bootstrap 3 or 5 here?
Great question. This is Bootstrap 5. Let's switch it over.
Yeah, because that's going to make a significant difference.
Easy enough to switch over here. Got a couple of steps, because I also have to change the theme over. So now when I run it, let's get it to come up. And I'm going to do the same. Let's do the most significant, I would think, would be an end user test. Because, you know, persona bar also skews the numbers. So we'll do this and refresh. And we're seeing still this half a second. We're seeing still half a second under Bootstrap 3. So I don't think it's, I think there's something more to look at in your environment.
Thank you for showing that. Much appreciated.
Sure. Well, and you know, you know, now the flip side, there are legitimate things, and you know, the discussion last week of, you know, when you're loading up dozens or 30 things, there are legitimate questions about what could be better, and I'm not saying don't complain about performance. I think we need to keep a focus on performance, but there can be a lot of things that go on that influence that. Good. What else does somebody bring to the table today?
So, good morning, everybody. I have a question Patrick and I were working on something last night, and first of all, thank you very much, Patrick, for your time and your talent. But so what I have is a dynamic form that I'd like to be able to get the values for the field, some of the field information, and then make that available essentially immediately. Right now, what I'm doing is going through a, put it to JSON and then rebuild everything with the answers back into another JSON and then processing from there. And it is similarly kind of overlaps the last two discussions. It's about performance and also probably some JavaScript capability. So what I need to be able to do is essentially find out the two values that I care about with the field. And that is the dynamically generated field ID, as well as the, in this case, the input, the response to the form itself. Now, Patrick, you and I ran into something last night where what we thought would work. That is, just take the field, what we knew about the field ID, put it in a set of brackets, show it in an error message, and the value should come up. That wasn't working. What I discovered after was that when I looked at the HTML of the error message, there was all kinds of stuff inserted right in the middle of the token itself. So once I got rid of that, it worked as expected.
I suspected that might be the case because it was right after we got off the call. I thought, I wonder if, yeah, because that's you're right. What you pasted in the ID, and when you paste an ID into an HTML field,
all weird things happen. It looks good on the view, but not behind the scenes. So the question I have really for the group is, how do I effectively get the field ID information from the field itself that's being dynamically generated, and then so I can use it essentially immediately in the stack, as opposed to going through JSON a couple of times, tokenizing and so on. If you want, I can share my screen and show you what I'm talking about.
Did you? I think, Matt, the other thing that we mentioned was, so you were loading you were saving the JSON that was created during your initialization into something, right? Into a hidden field?
Yes. So
did you consider the possibility on your button of rerunning the SQL just to recreate the field ID? Because I think that might be pretty efficient. If you whatever SQL you ran on your initialization that originally created the field IDs for the dynamic fields, if you run that SQL again just for the ID, not for any other information, just to get the ID again, I think might be potentially the most efficient way to go.
Okay. All right. That is definitely worthy of a try. My kind of first step was going to be take all that initialization, all the initialization components, which, there's a fair amount, and then essentially put them in a workflow, give it what it needs in the workflow, and see how that impacted performance. But maybe this is an easier and more efficient way of going about it. So click a button, run a SQL, grab the information that I need, and then go
put it into a list. Yeah, so that you have, because if you have multiple fields, you want to get, the IDs for each field.
And then iterate through the list, do what I need to do.
Yep. And then that way you get your values for each field. Yep.
Now, if I have a list, from an efficiency standpoint, generally speaking, would I be better off taking that list than pushing that list? Would I be better off executing a workflow on the button click that included running the SQL, generating the list, parsing through the list, and then writing the values back out to the database? Or is it, I'm thinking that the layers of the form add, programming overhead.
I think all you really need to do is just create list from SQL to get your IDs. That's what
on the button.
Yeah, I think and then you get your IDs, they're in a list, and then you do what you need to do with them.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I will give that a try. Thank you.
So I think I'm about to show my ignorance about JavaScript, but I'm just kind of thinking of, is there other ways to do what you're trying to do? So in the definition of a dynamic field, we reveal the bind expression on change click. Are your users you're trying to figure out what users have done with your fields, right?
Right.
Well,
So,
I mean, the simple use case that you have right now, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, is just you want to just get the value that they entered, right?
Yes, initially, but there's also other kind of options within this that they can add more data, but it's all values, you know, it's different, maybe a text field or something like that, but essentially, yes.
So what I'm wondering is if there's anything to working in the bind expression on change click, adding JavaScript that would store the name and the value in an array somewhere that could then be easily iterated through.
Well, I think that has definitely has potential. Your ignorance of JavaScript is only outshone by my ignorance of JavaScript. So I would like to avoid that just because. And if what Patrick says is, you know, hands out, then Bob's your uncle. On the other hand, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it's interesting that you mentioned that though, Dale, because one of the things Matt and I did talk about yesterday was doing an on-change click that calls an API to actually save the data that the user selected directly to the database immediately. So that's
I think Mark has brilliance, so let's jump in, Mark.
So I would like to jump in. Yeah, I would say I've tried saving things from a form immediately on the spot instead of waiting for the submit button, and I found good success with that. So that if that works for you, Matt, in this situation, that would be a good way to go. Secondly, I just posted something in the chat. I did a quick lookup while Dale was talking. I thought that was a great idea, Dale. Yeah, you can with JavaScript or with Java jQuery, you can run a function that will create an array of all the field IDs on a form, all the input boxes on a form. I think that you'll spend a little bit of time working that out and getting a good list that's usable, that's maybe a little bit cleaned up. But I think you could do it. Yeah, that's another approach.
Yeah. First of all, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Circling back to what Patrick was talking about was what he's developed using it for the Plant and App Academy, that the actual quiz itself. And he's got an on-change click that fires every time you click a button, the field value changes, and it calls the API. That's beautiful. I probably want to get to like a middle ground right now. And if I were to approach this using JavaScript, I would probably do the first suggestion to run the SQL, see how that works. And then if that's not performance-wise satisfactory, then create the API and then go every time a button is clicked, fire the API, do it, boom, boom, boom. Because based on what I watched last night, the samples off the quiz that Patrick built, it was extremely fast and very responsive. So like that a lot.
There's another method. Sorry.
No, just one final closing thought. Patrick, if you were so inclined to do something like a Campfire sample app, that would be so cool. That'd be really
well. Cool. I think I started that at one point, but I didn't. I didn't complete it. I probably need to go back and find it and try to complete it.
I would wholeheartedly encourage you. Thank you. Sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, for the purposes of speed and performance, instead of putting JavaScript on every single on-change event of your dynamically generated data, which that in and of itself could be a lot of performance issues there, because you're hitting the database over and over and over and over and over again for small bits of data, which is every single item. You could use that same code that's on the screen, that Mark shared, using JavaScript, as long as you define your field IDs with a specific kind of a pattern that you can search for. You can search for all of the fields that contain that pattern. Those are your specific dynamic fields. And now you have the IDs for every single one of them. And then you can process however you see fit.
Thank you. So noted.
So like, basically in the beginning of your field ID, you could say, my dynamic field _ and then whatever else as the dynamic part of the name. And then when you're pulling out using jQuery to find all of your inputs, you're basically going to filter off of an ID that starts with my dynamic field _ and that will pull out only your controls.
And I just thought, as we've been having discussion, I kind of brainstormed that a nice feature for us to add would be to improve the use of dynamic fields is an action that will get your currently loaded field IDs. So that's something for us to think about.
Great idea.
Yeah.
For those that are following along on the recording afterwards, we've been talking about dynamic fields. And so there's actions like add text box. And so you have to specify the name of the field. It has to be a unique ID that can be referenced later. And so this is the spot that we were just talking about that Ben, for example, said, let's start it with a particular unique string. So anyway, just trying to provide a little context.
So as an add-on thought to this conversation, Matt, in your case, if you find success in calling an API and saving the field input immediately upon entry, I suggest if you're in a scenario where you've got some forms that require the submit button to be pressed, and then people get to this particular page where things are saving on their own, shall we say, I would give some feedback to the user, because that says this has just been saved, like your entry was just saved or something. Maybe not even a pop-up that they have to respond to, but maybe a toast message that was there for a second or a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
Because they'll get confused. They'll think, where's my submit button? And it'll just be confusing.
Understood. Thank you. Good point. Well, thank you, guys. Much appreciated.
Great question.
Nice. What else?
All right, is it Dale or Patrick who's going to start singing?
In unison. Here we all go. Okay. All right, I am going to wander off. I know that I took a look and nobody has added anything into the Campfire shared website. I'm sure you're all holding your entries for the marketplace coming up in April. But I know I have at least one that I promised to Jen to put out on the Campfire, and I haven't had time. Anyway, there's nothing new out there. Hopefully we'll have one by next week. I'm finally surfacing from, I don't know about you guys. It's been since January 1 that I've been underwater. So finally surfacing from that and have a few extra cycles. But the feature request, I think that Oh, well, okay. I'll take a moment to, Don is asking about Marketplace, so I'll mention that. We have set as a goal for ourselves to add a Plantain App Marketplace. And this would be a place where, and I think we've mentioned this on Campfire before, but this would be an opportunity to share either low code, like a full solution or a part of a solution that you develop in low code out on the marketplace at either a $0 fee or a one-time fee or a price per month or per year to use, but something that you as a seller could develop and consumers could apply to their Plantain App implementation. So there's one type of thing that could be in the marketplace would be low code. The other thing that we'll find in the marketplace would be pro code. So if somebody opened up C# and developed their own extension and new actions or a specific implementation that would be an add-on to Plantain App, you could sell that in the marketplace as well. And then we are moving towards, we've announced that we're going to sell a beginner or smaller version of Plantain App. Our pricing policy up until now has been when you get access to Plantain App, you get access to almost all of the features immediately. And in terms of trying to provide other price points for people to enter into Plantain App, we have announced that we have a starter package, and that will be also supported by the marketplace. So meaning that you'll be able to get a starter license that will have a minimal amount of items, and then you'll be able to buy add-ons in the marketplace, so that if you want to do, if API endpoints, for example, was not included in your starter package, you'll be able to buy them. So we're not changing for people who've already purchased a license that covers the whole thing, but for people who buy a scaled down license, they'll be able to ease into the product. So marketplace, selling selling products within and extending Plantain App. I feel very passionately that this is going to be something that will help the Plantain App community in general, because right now the experience that we deliver is that when people get Plantain App, it is essentially an empty vessel ready to be filled. And low code is a great way to do that. You all know that you can get a long way in a short time. But if somebody were to develop a low code CRM system or ticketing system, those things would serve as great starter spots for somebody who has a business problem and it requires a CRM or a ticketing system, and then they could customize that to be their own, to suit their own particular business needs. So it would be more of a standing on the shoulders of giants experience rather than starting in with a clean slate. So while we're talking about it, Don, again, I see you asking about URL with details. We're talking about it, and we are targeting getting our minimum viable product out for April 1st, and that's not a joke. It's a real target. We don't have an official launch for it yet. So when we have it, you look for it, and we'll be talking about it in the beginning of April. And then, just so that we don't get you set an improper expectation, this is the first implementation is likely to have only things that Plantain App is publishing, some helpful low code that that we'll be offering. We don't know what exactly will be in the store, but we're going to be the first publishers, and when we have that figured out, then we'll move on to expanding that and making it available for other people to publish. And we're optimistic that anyone in this group would participate. And I see now Bogdan has arrived. So if you'd like to slap my hand for pre-announcing Marketplace, this would be a good time to do that.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it very well. We start working for it. Likely it will be a Q2 kind of thing. We need to have a couple of templates to start with. We'll have some of our add-ons, hopefully some new add-ons as well, which mainly it will be ours in the beginning. But then as we are setting the marketplace, we'll invite you to participate with your cool things to publish.
All right. Apparently I keep my job. So yes, Marketplace. So we, you guys, I think all these things that were in the feature requests, I think they were, I don't see anything new since last week. So you've had a chance to look at them, but if anybody wants to lobby for a particular one over the next 5 minutes or so, we'd be happy to entertain that. I would also ask if anyone has experienced a dark corner of the product, got into something that they haven't used before. That'd be a great way to wrap up our time today too. Good. Okay. Well, then I'm going to just take the opportunity to end 9 minutes early. And so in a moment, we will, I'll just thank you for showing up. I'll remind you that we're continuing a series on Low Code Cafe on Wednesdays this hour, and look forward to seeing you guys again here. Love this lively discussion that we had today and that we have every week. So we'll see you again on next Friday as well. Thank you all.